start with, I'm going to talk about the use of stories and experiences as well as the call for action. And that will be for 2 to 3 minutes. The second part of the evaluation is going to be given by Mary. And she's going to talk about presentation aspects as to how engaging Joe was, or was he natural or conversational. And the last part of our team evaluation is where Linda is going to talk about the overall aspects about could there be change through audience action, or would their viewpoint make a difference, and how persuasive can people be in the impromptu format. To start with, I felt a great deal of joy and thoughtfulness with Joe, how he was standing up and just spread his hands like, out comes his words to all of us. And he started from within his heart when he said, as Dr. Sharp, he addressed people he cared for. And the first person in the story that he spoke about was how the Pope addressed internal aspects that could reach out to the world more as a whole. And I felt, again, that was real good insight, how when people sometimes think by doing too little won't cover everything, but Joe gave a new insight to that. And he gave a story about what we all know well, 47 years ago. And that could touch us because of the simplicity and how it was revealed to us as children. But I didn't take note of all the stories, but I might suggest, Joe, that you focus the stories that you have to a fewer amount of stories and expand that more so that your pertinent advice can take more effect. Now, the second aspect I'm going to talk about was the call for action. And again, I liked how in the beginning you just really had a great smile, and you had a way about yourself that drew us in through your joy with what you treasure most. I like the comment you made about being spontaneous and bringing out a special, fresh voice, and it was real attention-grabbing when you used the word pants down. Don't get caught with it. Addressing segments of the people, again, could have been downsized a little bit before the end of your speech to make a better impact, such was indicated when people asked questions. There was a slight amount of confusion, but hats off to you for how you calmly addressed that confusion and drew to the next question. But to end your call for action is a great use of reborn, to give us spirit to say, yes, you touched us with what you had to say.
Mr. General Evaluator, fellow audience, and you, Joe. Joe, you come here with a deep yearning to share so much of your knowledge and your experiences. And you really have a genuine heart to let the audience know that you want to share this. The concern I see as an audience, as participant, is how can we segment this down, as you used in your diagram, so that all of the audience feels engaged in listening to you. You brought out the fact that when you come to a Toastmasters meeting and there aren't any speakers, most of us in the room are, and I say most, are Toastmaster members. We've been there, and I felt he's got us. He's bringing us into a Toastmaster meeting. And then all of a sudden you were off on some other stories, and that's fine to bring in a few other stories, but I would have liked to have the situation of how you prepared, or how we are to prepare ourselves when we come into this type of a situation in our Toastmaster meetings. In other words, when we're planning to have this happen, because we know it's going to happen, do we concentrate in our own minds about certain topics that we could share with an audience at the spur of the moment? And in traveling around, you encounter many situations, whether you're going into a store or you're going in to meet new people in a party. And I go, rather than making it so complex, simplify it. And you tried to do that with your diagram. And again, the diagram was hidden from some of our audience. But even to just summarize those key points and engaging us in the end to prepare, segment, and plan lets the audience know that there's 3 simple steps to be taken in this impromptu speaking. You are natural in the aspect of how you try to involve the audience with your questions. And then in hearing, again, some of the responses, there's always the impromptu practice of how do I segment this response to the next responder. So we saw vividly how you handled it. But I'm not so sure that we understood how I could handle it. I enjoyed that you shared some worldwide experiences like Lincoln and the Pope. But again, I go, not all of us are familiar with all of those aspects. And I would have liked to have seen it more on a personal basis of my experience in a Toastmaster meeting. You did have a valid point in that we all have experiences of having to speak in an impromptu meeting. We do it when we do our table topics, and you could have mentioned that, how we first start to experience this is in table topics and Toastmasters. But I do enjoy the fact that you have this deep desire to share all your knowledge and to share how we could practice some of this knowledge in our own lives. Thank you, Joe.
Joe, I want to reiterate what Mary said, in that you do one of the most astounding jobs of providing so much of your knowledge and doing that deep research that we all value, because you bring so many ahas and insights along with your speaking to us. One of the tasks that I have is to address whether or not this audience changed its viewpoint. You had, at the onset, asked everybody, have you given spontaneous speeches? How many of you have given spontaneous speeches? A great number of us raised our hands. So you had some people who didn't and a good number who did. The challenge for you as a speaker is to determine where is the audience right now and where am I going to move them to. I think that it might be honest to say, and it might have been a way for you to wrap this together, how many people have that feeling of resistance initially when they are put on the spot to give a spontaneous speech? I don't think there's one of us who don't hesitate before that speech opportunity is given to us. And maybe that was a way to address an instinctive or more subtle approach to whether or not we should give spontaneous speeches. Because we're always reticent in one way or another. One of the things I really appreciated in terms of how you persuaded is something that would never have occurred to me. You said, don't get caught with your pants down. Don't speak to the entire audience. I was always told that we should use the affirmative, and you said don't. And yet, that negative reinforcement actually worked for me, especially with things like don't get caught with your pants down. It opened up and refreshed us and made us laugh, and it worked. The interesting thing that you brought up with your speech that I don't know if you anticipated or not, Joe, was this other almost controversial subject of don't speak to the entire audience, this segmenting. You engaged the audience with a great deal of discussion. It almost wanted to dominate your speech, and I think that was a little challenging or maybe even a little surprising to you. One of the benefits of that was the spontaneous speech really took on a life of its own. And I think it might have helped you to take and leverage that and say to the audience, see, this is what happens with a spontaneous speech. There is input from the audience. And as a result, use that as evidence to persuade them additionally to give those spontaneous speeches, because there is more that can be garnered and gathered from the audience. On an aside note, Joe, oftentimes you have mentioned that you are concerned with your audibility out there. And I want to say that I sat in the back of the audience today. I heard every word you said. You did not need any kind of technology to make me hear that. And a lot of that reason was, I think, because of your enthusiasm, your preparation, and just the fact that you are willing and, as Mary said, happy to give of yourself. There was no need to listen to you through a microphone, and I actually enjoyed that.
Thank you, Linda. Now, for 1 to 2 minutes, or excuse me, now, Joe, will you give your reaction to the evaluators?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the team here very much. I heard several comments about simplifying and strengthening the talk, the main issue of the point. And I also appreciated the last suggestion, that people had to learn to take their own medicine. And they were the part of the segment that was being stimulated. So I want to thank you again. I enjoyed the talk very much. I'm looking forward to the written discussion.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you for your smile and laugh. That redirected me to not ask the audience first, but get your insight. Now, will people from the audience please give their input to Joe's speech? Tim.
Hi, Joe, this speech and the premise of this speech is just a great opportunity to be a lot more powerful. And I think the way to do that is to talk about our passions. I mean, all of us have passions and dreams in life. And all of us join Toastmasters to become better communicators. So you had a room of people really working at communicating better. And how many times do we get to give a prepared speech about our passions versus the opportunities we have in life to give impromptu speeches about our passions? And when you look and talk about the prepared and being constantly prepared to speak, it would have been a great opportunity to say not only to be prepared, but look for opportunities to give impromptu speeches about your passions and your dreams. And that would have got people's minds really thinking about, well, yeah, I have passions and things I want to talk about. And if we're looking for those, and then how to do that in an impromptu fashion, because you gave us some great information, and really, I think this would have been a great speech to fire us up and go out there and say, you know what, let's talk about the things that are important to us.
Thank you, Tim. Bonnie.
Yeah, back to some of what we were talking about segmenting. I think, too, you could have pulled the segmenting. You did the segmenting, then you could have pulled everybody back in by asking maybe 2 questions. One question would be a question for the ones who've been in that situation and how did it make you feel. The other question would have been for the group who's never been in that situation. And what are your fears, or what do you think you might get there? And what really this brought out for me is I have taught some at the Associated General Contractors, and we had one instructor who had worked in only construction and not road construction. So when he taught, he segmented out the road construction people, and they would literally sit in his class and sleep, because you have to have a way to pull your segments together.
Thank you, Connie. One more person, would you give your insight? Go ahead.
I'm thankful for that, Joe. Your message was something new to even members of Saturday Morning Live. You created an awareness that we don't usually hear of all the speeches that we've taken in. This is something that we haven't probably heard before. And I really appreciate that. It's very valuable, and it really could make a difference in certain situations.
Thank you, Violet. And thank you, team, for your